All right, good afternoon. Welcome to today's Data and Technology Insight webinar series. Today's webinar is Engaging Your Campus Community with Data Summits. My name is Laurie Haycock. I'm the Vice President for Data Technology and Analytics, and joining me today is Ashley McDonald, our Assistant Director of Network Recruitment and Retention, and three additional panelists. We have Rika Fine, who's Dean for Planning Research and Institutional Research at Anne Arundel Community College. We have Stephanie Mainberg, who's the Staff Associate for Student Success Squad and co-lead for the Achieving Success, and she's also an adjunct instructor wearing many hats at SUNY Broome Community College. And we have Terri Manning, who works at Central Piedmont and is also an Achieving the Dream Data Coach. So, as you all know, Achieving the Dream, we have our institutional capacity framework, and one of those key capacities, these are the key capacities that a college needs to have strengthened in order to foster that student-focused culture, improve the student experience, and ultimately improve student outcomes. One of the key capacity areas in that is data and technology. And that is the institution's ability to collect, access, analyze, and the key word here is use data to inform decisions and to utilize and leverage technology to support student success. And so this webinar series is one of the ways we work to help colleges build that culture of evidence and use of data. Another one of our key capacity areas is engagement and communication, and that's engaging both internal and external stakeholders. So really today's webinar marries those two capacities, data and technology, with engagement and communication, and how do you move from insight to action and get your college community talking about data, build that habit of institutional data use to inform your student success work. So embedded in each of our capacities is this culture of evidence, or a culture of curiosity. What are the key questions we should be asking for each area? And defined, it's the outcome of a deliberate strategy to make decisions through the analysis of data. And again, like data in and of itself is not useful. We want to move from data to information and then ultimately to insight and action. So the purpose of today's webinar is to give you some strategies on how to do that. I'm going to turn it over to Ashley now, and she's going to go over some of the engagement activities that are in our data guide, and then frame for you what a data summit looks like. And then we'll hear use cases with some of our network colleges.
Thanks, Lori. So this slide just is to provide you with a few examples of practical data engagement activities institutions can conduct. And they include data summits, which we'll focus on today, one data point, which is the inclusion of a data item with guiding discussion questions on a meeting agenda. There's the data placemat, data gallery, and world cafes, which we're familiar with. And all these activities share the same goal of facilitating intentional group learning all around data. So what is a data summit? A data summit is a facilitated group discussion on one or more student success data lasting 30 minutes or more. It typically takes place during fall convocation or during other events that allow for the broad engagement of stakeholders, such as administrators, full-time faculty, adjunct faculty, and staff by division. Attendees are placed into groups, then each group or table is provided with a data set and are asked to respond to 3 questions. This allows the team to reflect on and discuss the data and identify next steps or action items. So if you're thinking about hosting a data summit, you'll need refreshments. These are suggested. It's always easier to organize and bring people together around food. You'll want a facilitator, and you're welcome to leverage your ATD coaches as facilitators. Round tables, we suggest having 5 people per table. But to encourage cross-functional, cross-hierarchical engagement, you can establish group or table assignments in advance. You can also have attendees count off to determine which tables they should sit at. And then at each table, you'll want your data set or a packet of data representing one of the topics during the summit. You'll also need flip chart paper to record your discussion and markers. So when you're at the table, you'll need to assign a timekeeper, a recorder, and a reporter. Each table should take 20 to 30 minutes to review the data and discuss it as a group. And then you should respond to the following 3 questions, and the recorder should record the group responses. If you have multiple data sets, you should rotate to the next table with a different data set. And if you're doing rotations, you'll just want to keep in mind that the first round takes a little bit longer and takes more time, as it takes more time for participants to get used to protocol. So you can suggest 30 minutes for the first round and shortening the remaining rounds to 20 to 25 minutes. When you're ready to report out, each table should stick the sheets on the wall by subject area and report out on their discussion with the larger group, sharing what was learned and what's next. After the summit, the host should synthesize all the information gathered, and this includes the flip chart responses, the summary of takeaways and action steps, and share it with attendees. Then the attendees follow up on the action item. So now that I've given you a general overview of how to conduct the data summit, I'll turn the presentation over to Stephanie, who will share how SUNY Broome is engaging their campus with data.
Great, thank you. So my name is Stephanie Malmberg, and I am actually our lead position for our Achieving Success initiative, which is how we've termed it here on our campus. And so a little bit about us. So we are a newer Achieving the Dream school. We are the first cohort of ATD network schools to complete the ICAP. And we held our first data summit during our data and discovery phase. So our data team was turning out a high volume of data in order to develop the baseline data that informed our action priorities. We're located in Binghamton, New York, and we're part of the state university system. We have approximately 7,200 credit students. 30% of our student body is minority. And this has been increasing steadily over several years. We recently opened up a residence housing on our campus. We're predominantly female, and the mean age of our student is 20.5 years. I don't know why I did that, sorry. So this particular data set would be one of the data sets that we use in our data summit. And so what this showed, this particular slide is jarring for faculty to see. So as you can see here, there are lines that represent major groups of students, and one of these being an aggregate line. It's the aggregate information that we have historically had access to. So presenting these 3-year graduation rates in this way, noting the downward trend of our cohorts of students of color as the reported numbers of these students has increased, has led to some courageous discussions on our campus regarding the experience of students of color at SUNY Broome. These are new discussions, and those of us who are in the ATD trenches, so to speak, continue to leverage this data, expanding upon it as new data becomes available, and much of this data will inform the contents of future data summits as well. So forgive me, for some reason it's not advancing on my end, so pardon the technical difficulty. So pardon the technical difficulty. I'm unsure as to why I'm not able to advance it, so forgive me. So pardon the technical difficulties. So when we were planning our data summit, we essentially ended up aligning this with our Achieving the Dream coaching visit. So we wanted to maximize the amount of time we had with our coaches and get valuable feedback from them, as well as campus constituents, and how we were leveraging the data that would guide the development of our action plan, which we had due to Achieving the Dream just a few weeks after their visit and our data summit. We invited everybody we could. So because our initiative has always been a coalition of the willing, we wanted to branch outside of the usual attendees and perhaps engage new allies in our charge. We were fortunate to receive registration support from our Teaching Resource Center, and we were, as Ashley mentioned, ready to provide snacks and coffee, which are always helpful in facilitating some of these conversations. And so what we shared at our first data summit was the data packets essentially that we had pulled together, along with bulleted summaries of what the data meant for the big areas that we were working through. So those included persistence and retention, completion, gateway course data, and of course our ICAT results. And then one of the things that we did is we reached out to areas in campus that we knew were already using data to support continuous improvement. As a doctoral student, I attended an event that paired students with faculty members to exchange quick elevator pitches about our research. And I used this awkward, albeit awkward, but interesting concept in developing speed data. And so this activity had stewards of data at tables, and attendees would rotate every 10 minutes. So I set a timer, and the stewards of data at each table would have quick handouts, charts, graphs, and summaries of what it is, of what data they were using and what it means to them. And then participants were then given a few minutes to ask questions. For our first data summit, we had 5 tables and areas represented, which filled an hour perfectly with travel and settling down time. Afterward, we wrapped this up with a conversation asking participants what surprised them. What would they like to know more about moving forward? And you know, what do they know now that they didn't know when they walked into the door? So it really illuminated a lot of what was happening maybe in siloed areas that other people didn't necessarily have access to. And so we reviewed this slide during my technical difficulty, so I'll go to the next one. And so the next one, similarly to that last slide, this was another example of what we were sharing with our participants. So the idea is that here is another opportunity to disaggregate our knowledge of how students are faring at our institution. Here we use Pell eligibility as a proxy for low income and explaining that definition and the rationale behind it to a room full of attendees, which then can ignite meaningful discussion around the subject. And so finally, what we plan on doing moving forward. So we plan on, I know I alluded to this a moment ago, we are in the process of envisioning our second data summit. We had such great campus-wide feedback regarding the first one that we knew this shouldn't be a one and done, not a kind of check it off, we've done this kind of thing. The goal is to host it at a time, though, when a bulk of the faculty can attend, and we don't necessarily have a fall convocation. We have an event in spring that's very well booked, and there's no way we can insert ourselves into that. However, graduation day at SUNY Broome is a holiday, and this takes place in the evening, and we think that we might be able to harness some of that energy and excitement earlier in the day at the next data summit. We plan to continue to dig deep into our student outcomes data in new ways, as well as continue to highlight the ways in which areas on our campus are leveraging this data in the continuous refinement of processes and improvement of student outcomes. We're also collaborating with our partners in assessment to highlight how students are assessed for middle states, SUNY, and institutional learning outcomes. Right after our first data summit, we were made aware of a historically underattended tradition on campus known as Assessment Day. We were able to attend their event and have collaborated on a shared vision of these as one cohesive event for the future.
Hi, my name is Rika Fine, and I'm from Anne Arundel Community College. I also am not moving forward, so let me just try one more time. Okay, I'm going to continue on. I can't advance the slides.
We'll advance it for you if you just tell us, just cue us.
I will. I'm going to talk to you about our campus right now. We joined Achieving the Dream in 2009, so we're a more seasoned participant in Achieving the Dream. also suburban community college located in Maryland, just outside of Annapolis, about 20,000 credit students. Minority population, as Stephanie alluded to, has been increasing, about 36% of our student body right now. 60% of our students are female. We're slightly older than the population that Stephanie described. In the remarks I'm going to make now, I'd just like to highlight our Data Summit journey. And because we've been in Achieving the Dream a longer time, I think we have journeyed along this notion of data summits. And there are three key points that I want to keep going back over in terms of summits. One is the importance of data. The second is the discussion. And then lastly is the action. So we did have the fortunate opportunity at a winter convocation, both in 2011 and 2012, to kind of like launch this data summit notion. It was really the first time that we had campus-wide data sharing, and that sounds, I mean, kind of amazing to me when I reflect back on it. What we wanted to make sure was that there was a common set of walking facts, things that people understood about our college that they could kind of like coalesce around and repeat and begin to understand what were we doing and what were some of the initiatives. At these summits, we pose the questions, but are we happy with these findings? Because many times you give out data and you just give it out as here's the fact. And we wanted them to reflect on, are they happy with that? Are there changes that we need to make or strides we need to go for? Our topics revolved around developmental education, graduates, and retention. I think the result that I saw as of that one was that we actually did have people walking and talking facts on campus, which up until then was really quite silent. Okay, we can go to the next one. In 2013, again, time moves on. We used the approach of data sharing, seeking input and action. When we partnered internally with our Middle States team, we were up for our review, as well as the Strategic Planning Council team. And again, here we went into very detailed analysis of retention, looking at disaggregations. In many ways, we looked at a retention, or what other people would call persistence, and then the time to completion. The interesting thing that we received back from this is that we really needed to restructure our intranet presence. Increase and restructure our reports. They had been very laborious in terms of lots of words. People wanted to fact check and get to the point. We expanded the data that was available, so we made more information available. And one thing that was kind of a surprise, although in IR we know exactly what our reports are due, not everyone does, and so we created a one-page calendar that listed all of our reports, when the data would be refreshed, for what terms, and where the data was located. All right, let's go on to the next one. And I can truthfully tell you that we have confirmed at Anne Arundel that feed them and they will come. We created seminars called Data and Donuts. And this was an opportunity to really target discussions of data that was reported and work with offices specifically about how they were using the data. What data did they need to help them make different decisions? So we would meet with admissions, find out what data did they need, information did they use when they were making decisions. And so that was a very fruitful kind of thing. They've taken that idea of donuts and created it now in our Teaching and Learning Center. We also were embarking on our new strategic plan. So we spent 2 half days talking about environmental scans related to credit and non-credit. This was new data, exciting data, kind of hard data for some people to process through, but we used that same approach of provide the data, give them time to discuss, and then look at what actions they thought we should take. What program should we include? What should we ask ourselves as we're moving forward on our strategic planning? Okay, next slide. I was thrilled during the 2016 DREAM conference to hear the presentations on lead and lag measures. It really solidified for us the way that we needed to begin to pose data to the college. No longer were we just giving them information. We needed to provide them with where we needed to get as our targets, our lag measures, but then these signposts or lead measures needed to be articulated. And for us, that has meant all the difference in the world. We are using that currently with our FTE and our headcount. And so that was a really big push that I think changed the discussion landscape for our college. All right, let's go on to the next slide. So we're at 2017 and beyond. I think that what I have learned is that Data Summit data needs a home. And for us, that's the Data Corner, and it's on our portal. It's specifically called Data Corner because they can't move it. It can't be in the center, and it can't be at the bottom. It's at the top. And so what we now have is this home we've moved to dashboarding. We call trackers those things that we have lead and lag measures for, and infographics for the people that just want to cut to the chase and get some pieces. I've satisfied people by we're not doing any more paper reports, and so they missed our executive summaries, and so the infographics are what I say are our summaries. So we have dashboards that are replacing our old reports, and it gives power to the users. We're at a point now in our campus where we can turn over data because we've worked with it for a long time. We can turn data over to people and have them go through and look at what is happening, who are the students, what's the impact of certain initiatives. Again, these trackers, we weekly track our headcount and our FTE, and that's been remarkable. We're adding trackers for applicants and then conversions as well. These trackers are used by our presidents and vice presidents group every week. They look at them. It gives them the opportunity to make real-time course corrections if we're not meeting targets. And when we didn't, we made real-time course corrections. This is also the first time we've been able to provide data at the academic school and academic program level. So deans and chairs and directors are managing their own FTE counts and their head counts. I have to say that this is an efficiency for IR, for all of those IR folks on the call. Our time is always really very stretched, but we have realized incredible efficiency using these dashboards. And by 2020, we're currently pulling up data as we are in meetings, but by 2020 at the latest, we're going to have a data set created that will allow us to do analysis as we're in meetings and answer questions. Okay, let's go on to the last slide. So realize that this is a journey. It is not a race. I want you to know, don't give in and don't ever give up. I've never given up. I constantly am saying this is what we need. And here we celebrate win areas, even if they're small. It might be where we've created better data elements with people on campus. It will recraft what IR does. This is data summits, and data sharing like this is not exactly what IR has done. The other thing that I think the data summits do is they start to minimize data anxiety. Just like students have math anxiety, people have data anxiety, and I think that they get in there and they feel comfortable because they're hearing from their peers and they have a chance to reflect on information. So thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Terri Manning, and I'm a data coach with Achieving the Dream, and I've been working with the initiative since 2005. And I have had quite a few of my colleges kick off their ATD work with the Data Summit, and others have, done them later on in their process. But the Data Summit is a great just activity to engage folks inside the college. And I think when most of us think about a Data Summit, we think about a large event where we pull, the whole campus together or large groups of people together. But it can be done within, one department. It can be done with senior leaders. It can be done at a dean's meeting where you're just trying to engage people to look at data and think through it and analyze it and come up with some understanding of what's going on at the institution that might possibly lead to action. But one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about a little bit is the fact that a lot of ATD colleges have organized some different kinds of data summits, and they are doing them also with their external stakeholders. And a data summit would be a great activity to do with an advisory committee, or if you have an advisory committee breakfast once a year, or some large external committee that, say, works with your president, you know, a president's advisory team, to have a small couple of pages of data tables to engage the group with some questions, and, you know, have them change tables or mix it up some, so they get involved in some of the student success data from the institution. Because these external committees that come in and do work for the college often spend all their time focused on the bottom line of, you know, budget and raising money and bonds and things like that. They don't really get much opportunity to talk about what's going on with students at the college. And we've found that when this has happened, that they really enjoy it, and it's energizing to them. One of the kinds of summits I've seen done also is in collaboration with your local four-year transfer school. I live in North Carolina, and our UNC institutions have now got a performance funding measure around transfer students, and they're very concerned about the success of transfer students. And we've had two, in essence, data summits with them, where their IR department and our IR department have worked together to come up with some data on the students that leave us and go to them, or sometimes students that leave them and come back to us and then go back to them. So we've had some really interesting discussions around data with our transfer students. Also, high school partners are a really good group to get together in a data summit. One of the colleges I work with, they were very concerned about the math performance of students coming out of high school, and they conducted a data sort of week-long summit where they invited all of the high school math teachers, all of the community college math teachers, and then the math teachers from their four-year most common transfer institution. And they spent, you know, multiple hours a day for a week going through the issues that we had with math students, the issues that the K-12 system had from their state offices, and, you know, what the placement tests tested for. And you know, they just had a great conversation, and, you know, worked on some solutions through the data summit. Once the English department saw the success of the math one, then they hosted one, same thing, just with English faculty, English and reading faculty from high schools, community college, and the university. Also, some colleges are using a data summit to analyze some of their qualitative data, like when they get their SESI results back, or if they do a student survey of some sort across the institution that is worthy of you know, discussion. Because of the fact that transferring is becoming a critical issue, and so many states have, you know, articulation agreements, the transfer piece is a very good opportunity for a data summit. So if you haven't conducted one of those in your area, you might want to consider it. So I really kind of already went through what's on this slides about partnering with the four-year institution. So I'm going to skip to the next one. Okay, the next one. Sorry about that, you guys. One of the other community colleges that I have worked with had done a survey around technology usage with students, and faculty had a set attitude about, or belief, I guess, in how much access students had to computers, and what kind of internet they had, and they were getting ready to launch off on a program to improve access to technology. And they did a campus-wide assessment and found out that, you know, virtually all their students had computers and had internet access. And they pulled together the entire faculty to spend, you know, a portion of an afternoon analyzing the data from this survey that they did on technology with students, to find out, you know, what students had to say, to figure out, you know, where they did have issues, what kind of experience students had had. And the survey was pretty comprehensive about, you know, what kind of exposure they'd had to Microsoft Office products, and their experiences with presentations and writing papers. And It was a great opportunity for the college to have a serious talk about something that was in essence qualitative data from students, and to have a discussion about what the institution could do to improve computer skills in students without first thinking that they had to address the whole access issue. Next slide. One of my, I mentioned the CESI results. One of my other colleges has a data summit every time they receive their CESI results. And, CESI is full of information, and it's an expensive tool for colleges to utilize. And some colleges, the senior leadership reads it, and, a few deans or faculty members address it, and a few things might happen, but a lot of times people across the institution really don't ever see it. And CESI has, implications for student services and faculty in the classrooms, interactions between students, between, faculty and students. And it's a great opportunity for a cross-college group to sit down and do some analysis of those results and form some teams to take some action. When we have done data summits in the past, and this is one of the other benefits around it, is that it's a great opportunity to present data, say, we have issues here, and then would any of you like to volunteer to participate in, planning work in addressing issues and participating in, an initiative. And we've gotten a lot of people volunteering to participate in on teams to address the issues that they just talked about, in the data summit. Because sometimes people are not aware of what's going on at the institution, and once they are, they want to take action. And so it's a really good place to solicit, input from people and to get volunteers. So that's it for me.
All right, thanks, Terri. You can learn more about hosting a data summit by reading Chapter 5 of ATD's Data Discovery Guide. And then you can find the guide by searching Achieving the Dream Data Discovery Guide on Google, or you can find it on our website by searching for the Data Discovery Guide, and it will bring it up. You can also find the Data Discovery Guide in the network community in ATD Connect, and that's the path that you want to follow to bring up the guide. And this is just a list of our upcoming webinars for the Data and Technology Insight series. And these are the next two ones, and the next one's coming up, and you're welcome to register for them. And you're also welcome to review previous webinars from this series by clicking on the link and then selecting the playlist titled Data and Technology Insight Webinar Series. So now we'll dive into Q&A. And you can submit your questions by typing your questions into the Q&A box below. And it looks like we have them right now. So I'll just. So the first question is, what is a data placemat?
All right, that's a protocol that you can represent a series of data sets and have questions on it. And there's examples in the data discovery guide with how you set that up and the protocol for using that. But it's basically an 8.5 by 11 or 11 by 17 sheet that has specific data points and then some targeted questions and maybe a little bit of analysis so that everybody's looking at the same thing and reflecting on that and going deeper in it.
All right, next question is a data summit and a World Cafe the same event?
They can be very similar. So you could have like a data set on one topic, and like one on retention at a table. You could have one on graduation rates at another table, on labor market outcomes at another table, and rotate people through. I think that's a great model to do it. You could also do it on course success rates and like your top 25 highest enrolled courses, and you could do it by subject area and rotate through. So I think ultimately there's different ways you can do it. You could even embed a data exercise within your regular team meetings or leadership meetings. So it's just fostering engagement and conversation to move to insight to action. But many people do use that World Cafe model.
I don't think there. Here goes another question. So you mentioned that IR skill set will need to change with the use of data summits. Can you elaborate?
For me at Anne Arundel, is that okay if I talk?
Sure.
Okay. Sorry. At Anne Arundel, what it has done is taken IR people off the computer and put them in discussions with people so that they understand what the questions are, how the data they're presenting should be reformatted or needs to be, reworked. It's just, I found, got them out of the office, and many times that's not something IR does. The dashboards for us have actually emboldened them to have meetings, and we create the dashboards only in conjunction with other offices. So it's really meant that the IR people are coming out. They also have to have a different level of technology skills than what they might have had several years ago.
Yeah, a common term that you'll hear now, I think, is democratizing data and really getting it out of the IR shop, like set your data free and getting it into the hands of the front lines and decision makers. And I think dashboarding, Rick, is a great way to do that because people have access to it and they can mine it and slice it and dice it in a variety of different ways to drill down and answer some of those questions that they might have had to pose a request to the IR shop before, which takes time so that they can have it at their fingertips. And Rick, somebody did ask what dashboarding tool you're using at Anne Arundel.
At Anne Arundel, we've been using Tableau, and we started actively in July with the server option, so it's open to the college if they're trained. And we have about 10 dashboards and trackers now, with probably 3 more planned before the end of the calendar year. It's really been just like the most exciting thing. And I think that is true, the way that Laurie was talking. It does get it away from IR. People feel that it's their data now. That's my data. I can get in and look at it.
Great, and we do have one of our data and technology webinars that Pierce College did on the use of Tableau for dashboards. So for those of you who are interested in learning more, I encourage you to look at that, watch that webinar.
So we have 2 more questions. The concept of data stewards was introduced. How does this work?
So the way that we use that is with particular people at tables who had essentially control of that data or who had historically managed that data. And so they knew it inside and out. And so their ability to convey it to a layperson and say, this is what I pulled, this is what it means to me, and this is how I use it to make these changes, or this is how I used it to decide to make this particular option no longer an option but mandatory. And so that is how we use them. Stewards was really a title that we gave to them to kind of prop them up a little bit and give them a little bit of confidence in what it is that they know and their ability to discuss this with confidence to their peers.
There's more questions. So would you, I think, Terri, I think this is directed for you. Would you elaborate the data summit with external partners? Who attended from internal and external? What transfer data was shared? How long was the summit and how often should it be held? How does it help in reaching articulation agreements?
Okay. The ones that we have had lasted, we've had 2 of them in the last year. They lasted, we had lunch and then 2 or 3 hours worth of talking. And the data that we presented was really about students from my college that transferred to the university, and the ones that went out there without a degree versus those who went with a degree. and we're close to each other in the town, and so we have a lot of students that swirl, you know, who go here and then out there and come back here and go out there. And so we looked at, you know, the kind of that issue around students not really committing to one institution but taking courses back and forth and back and forth. Some of the interesting stuff we looked at that was a concern was the students that went out and took science at the institution, that they were not doing as well as the university wanted them to do. So we had to bring in some of the science faculty into that meeting, and we talked a little bit about, you know, more direct pathways into the university, so that if students are going from the community college to university in business, that the business faculty recommends that in the articulated courses they can take, they take this specific course in the social sciences, or this type of math, or this, you know, science course. So we kind of started, everything we had done with them in the past was pretty general, and now because of the fact that they're very interested in the success of these students, they're starting to get into specifics, which was great. So we've developed a good relationship with the IR department at the university, and we've signed a data sharing agreement with them, and we're just going to passing data back and forth and looking, you know, at things back and forth with them. So that's the way that ran. Now, who was at the meeting? We had like the chief academic officer. So for us was our vice president. For them, it was their provost. We had the dean of undergraduate students. We had, you know, some faculty from key areas. We had some administrators, some student services staff, because, and we had an open conversation about the lack of engagement, you know, of students that come from a community college where it's more tight knit and walk out onto a big spread out university campus. And we discussed having focus groups and doing things which they were all for. So it just really opened up the lines of communication between the community college and the university, to where I think in the future we'll be able to get answers to a lot of things from having better access to our students who've transferred out there. Was that all? Did I answer everything?
I'm just gonna add that Aspen has come out with the transfer playbook, and they've held 3 workshops. They did one in Washington State, one in Ohio, and one in North Carolina that brought the 2-year and 4-year colleges together. But there's some really great data in there, like transfer out, transfer with and without an associate, and disaggregated transfer data. So you could use that as a model as well with those metrics to host a data summit. So I encourage you to access that resource if you haven't checked it out yet. And I think, Terri, there was another one on accreditation.
What was the question?
How you could use, I think, a data summit to support accreditation.
It was an articulation agreement.
Oh, articulation.
Oh, to support it. Well, it depends on your state, I suppose. Our state and several of the states I work with have, you know, 100 community colleges that are all in one articulation agreement with the entire university system. So making changes in it is difficult, but you know, the data starts somewhere, and so we are, you know, we're in conversations with our universities about the appropriateness of what's in our articulation agreement. We've recently sort of trimmed it down, you know, to where it's the students are pretty much guaranteed they won't lose any credits. But in our case, I'm not sure a data summit between our institution and one of the UNC schools in North Carolina would do anything to move the articulation agreement in any direction, but it would, you know, get some action started, because the universities are, you know, come together and talk about the issues that they're having around this topic.
And I think it does help colleges design their pathways, right? And narrow down those pathways to ensure that the students have seamless transfer.
And don't lose a bunch of credits, because that's what was happening with ours. There was way too many courses, you know, in the list of humanities and the list of social sciences, and they weren't transferring, so students were having to.
And also taking excessive credit.
Right. Exactly. Any other questions?
Okay, so again, we really encourage you, like the goal of all of these is to facilitate group learning and action. So whether you're using a data gallery walk, data placemat, a data summit, a think, pair, share, a world cafe, those are, you know, all strategies that you can use. And again, if you go to the data guide, you'll see protocols for each of those, how long they typically take, how many people you should engage, and how you can organize those. ATD hosts an annual fall data and analytics summit, so we encourage you to come to that. And we'll also have some targeted sessions at our DREAM conference coming up in February in Nashville.
We also have one more question. The question is, how did you get the four-year university to be interested in engaging in the Data Summit?
So a lot of them have it in their performance-based funding. But they're also being held accountable for improving the transfer experience. Pause and let some of the other panelists jump in.
Well, we actually started our work before the performance funding thing came out, and it was just a couple of people at our institution approached a couple of people at our local transfer institution and said, can we get together and talk about our combined students? Because at any given time, as many as like 25 to 30% of students at our local university has had some credit from our institution. And so they were not quite as interested as we were at first, but when we got together and started talking, that, you know, the interest grew. And then when the performance funding piece came out, it was already a pretty solid group of people working, and it just transitioned into something more serious.
And there's competition also, especially when, you know, colleges have declining enrollments. If another college in their service area has really strong articulation, and students are going to go there because they're not losing credits, and it's a better transfer experience for them, and that starts impacting a college that doesn't have that, and they start losing more students, that gets their attention because they're losing tuition dollars. And there's also a movement with reverse transfer, right? And so some colleges are entering into those reverse transfer agreements to award associate degrees and certificates retroactively.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
All right, I think that is it for our questions. I want to thank Terri and Stephanie and Rika so much for joining us today and contributing to the conversation. I want to thank all of you who tuned in. Have a great afternoon. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.